Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Sanctum. We haven't done one of these review or reaction videos in quite some time. We are back with a very special, spoiler-free review of Christie Golden's World of Warcraft Before the Storm. Special thanks to Blizzard Entertainment and Del Rey Books for sending me an early copy of the book to review. Del Rey Books is also sponsoring our giveaway on Twitter for 5 copies of Before the Storm. So, if you want in on this giveaway, follow the link below to our Twitter account, give us a follow, and retweet the heck out of that giveaway tweet. We'll be drawing 5 names at random on June 10th, this upcoming Sunday, so don't wait. Now, before I start the spoiler-free review, for anyone looking for actual juicy details of the book, stay tuned. I will be doing a full coverage of everything that goes on in Before the Storm in the next couple days. I wanted to do a little conversation or just talk about the book in general without giving too much spoilers, and sort of convince those who haven't really pre-ordered yet or are still on the fence about reading this, give them a reason as to why they should read it without actually ruining the story. So, here we go. We're diving in. Right off the bat, the book starts with the events following the final cinematic of Legion. Sargeras, as we know, in his final spiteful act before being imprisoned, stabs Azeroth, leaving this massive sword and a massive wound in the desert of Silithus. And shortly after that, we got 2 cinematics, an Alliance and Horde one, featuring Anduin giving a speech and the Horde dinner party in Orgrimmar. And this book actually covers both of those scenes in detail. This is not really a spoiler. I'm not going to say what goes on in those scenes, but something that I found was a little bit unique was we're giving a written perspective of a cinematic we've seen in-game. So even though we've already seen what happens, when you're reading out the scene, you already have that cinematic mental image in your head. You can already see that cinematic playing in your head, but there's little details that don't happen in the cinematic that do happen in the book that you just don't see, or that couldn't have been shown in the cinematic. And I thought it was a real cool parallel to draw between something that we've seen in-game, whether it's through in-game quests or in-game content or the cinematics themselves, and seeing it in a written novel format. So I thought that was really cool. Not too much of a spoiler there, but you see both those perspectives, both those cinematics in written view, covering Anduin and Sylvanas' introduction to Azeroth, which is the main part of the story, or one of the main parts of the story. As we know, after Sargeras stabs Azeroth, the blood of our Titan starts to bubble up in spots around the wounds, and the Horde and Alliance make a grab for it. And as we saw in that cinematic, Anduin and Sylvanas have very particular reactions, and Christie Golden does a great job at explaining what goes on in their minds. We see this weird roller coaster of emotion in Anduin's face when he touches it, and Sylvanas' reaction is very different, but everything that goes on in their heads and what they see, she tells us. She paints that image for us, and we'll cover that in the main spoiler review. But the main point is that Azeroth is one of the major plot points to the story, as you can imagine with the lead up to Battle for Azeroth. Now, in terms of characters, Anduin and Sylvanas are obviously the main characters. From the cinematic, we can really see how the Azeroth affects them and why this new mineral is just so important to them. But it leads into that next question of what now? The big question we all think at the end of every expansion: what happens next? Anduin, an advocate for peace. What's his goals? Well, what is he going to do in the wake of the Legion's defeat? Sylvanas, not so much an advocate for peace, but now War Chief of the Horde, no longer lurking in the shadows, but rather leading the Horde up front. What is she going to do in the wake of the Legion's defeat? And Azeroth suddenly puts all these ideas into their head of what's coming next. Usually, at the end of every expansion, one threat ends and a new threat rears up. Well, we've just defeated the big bad, the Legion. Sargeras is imprisoned, so it's kind of hard, like, where are we going to go next? Azeroth. Azeroth is that little catalyst that's going to kind of drive the future of what's coming next. So it begs the question, who moves first? As Anduin says in the cinematic, the Horde clearly knows about this mineral, and the Alliance needs to know more. They need to know more about this mineral to prevent the Horde from getting their hands on it, to learn more about it. And the Horde, well, Galliwix promises Sylvanas that his people are on it before the Alliance does. So it becomes this race for this new unknown material and what that holds for the future. Without diving into spoilers, as we can assume, Greymane and Nathanos are in this story. And what's really interesting is, like in Nathanos' short story that we got in Legion, we get to see some behind-the-scenes Nathanos. In-game, he's very aggressive. He yells at the player. He's one of the only NPCs in-game who doesn't really respect the Horde player. And Nathanos has his reasons for that, but everyone just assumes he's this aggressive crank and this sort of crusty old bucket, and, you know, frankly, he is. But he's a much different character when he's one-on-one with, you know, with his Dark Lady. And we see a lot of that. We see a lot of the personal dialogue between Nathanos and Sylvanas, which we don't necessarily get in game. So that was a nice change. And Greymane, we see Greymane really stepping up as he has throughout Legion, as the secondary advisor to Anduin, where Velen is the word of wisdom and the calming voice of peace. Greymane is a little bit more rough and gruff, and not so much rough and gruff in terms of warmongering, but we actually see this kind of fun, sarcastic relationship between Greymane and Anduin, which is kind of interesting because we've never really seen this sort of rough, playful attitude from Greymane. Even if he does have these aggressive tendencies towards the Horde, we do see this kind of interesting exchange between the King of Gilneas and the King of Stormwind. So it's kind of interesting to see there, something we've never really seen unfold, with the exception of the Broken Shore cinematic, where Greymane and Anduin and Velen are standing before the Tomb of Sargeras. As we can expect, there's a lot of cameo appearances of major characters that kind of give us a little bit of a taste as to what they're doing or what they will be doing. We get a little bit of Moira in there, a little bit of Magni, Bane, as we can assume, Velen. And without saying too much, as we can assume with Azerite, there's a surprising amount of Gallywix. And Gallywix has been so absent in the story up until now that I am looking really forward to what Gallywix is going to bring to the table. Seeing him in that Horde cinematic, hearing Darren DePaul play this greedy, grimy character, that you almost just love to hate. Seeing as we haven't seen much Gallywix, I'm actually really excited, or was really pleasantly surprised to see how much Gallywix was in the story, and where that's going to come into play in Battle for Azeroth, the actual expansion. In true Christie Golden fashion, there are a ton of new minor characters that are introduced, and one thing that I love about Christie's books is these minor characters, maybe they're made up entirely for the story, maybe they're just NPCs she took from the game. Both happen in many of her books, but she gives life to these characters, to these NPCs that you might just see wandering around Stormwind or standing in an inn somewhere that you might recognize the name after so many years of playing, but they mean nothing to you. She suddenly fills them with life. She brings this whole world to life with these minor little characters, minor little plot points here and there that ultimately contribute to the story, but ultimately just make the world of Azeroth feel that much more rich, that much more alive. And, you know, not to say that the big names like Anduin and Velen and Bane and Sylvanas and all these huge names aren't important, but these minor names really add to the sheer size of Azeroth. And in true Christie Golden style, we get quite a few of these little characters, and it just really adds to the book. So I was really happy to see some of these minor characters fulfill their small plot points throughout the book. Now, the plot of the book, and this is going to be hard to talk about without spoilers, but as we know, the book is called Before the Storm, and is relatively believed to be the prelude to the pre-event for Battle for Azeroth. And I'm going to say it is the prelude to the pre-event, but it's also not the prelude to the pre-event, and here's why. Why it is the prelude to the pre-event is Azerite. Azerite is going to be key for the next year and a half, 2 years, throughout Battle for Azeroth. We know from BlizzCon that Azerite is the blood of Azeroth that is bubbling up. We know that it's going to play a huge role both in the game mechanics in-game as well as the story with Magni. And Before the Storm really sets up as to how powerful this stuff really is and why there's a sudden race for it. Why is everyone getting so up in arms about this? We know Magni's on a mission to save Azeroth, her physical blood. But we're not so selfless. We're rushing to get our hands on this, and why is there this race? And the introduction to Azerite and the whole Azerite plot point in the book is key to setting up the events of the pre-event. Instead of thinking fully of our world, there are those in the book who think about the future, their future, the future of Azeroth, without necessarily thinking about the future of Azeroth herself, not the Titan, but rather the global domination. And that's where the name Battle for Azeroth comes into play. Now, this is probably going to be the most spoilery part of the book, but this is more in relation to the pre-event. It doesn't directly set up the events of Teldrassil or even the Battle for Lordaeron in terms of direct plot points that are setting up. With War Crimes, we had Garrosh Hellscream escaping his trial with the Bronze Dragon and the Bronze Dragon artifact, which served as the breadcrumb trail from Mists of Pandaria into Warlords of Draenor and the Hellscream short story that came before the expansion. This book isn't exactly so linear in terms of leading us directly to Teldrassil, but it serves a greater purpose. As I just previously mentioned, the name Battle for Azeroth is important here because characters in the story are thinking both about Azeroth herself and the future of Azeroth, the future of them, their kingdoms, their future rather than our future as a whole. And obviously, this has been a conversation on many forums and subreddits and Twitter conversations. Battle for Azeroth, does that mean battle to conquer the planet between the Horde and Alliance, or is that the battle for our Titan? And this story sets up the long-term story of what Battle for Azeroth truly is going to be. So, while I'll argue that Before the Storm isn't a direct connection to Teldrassil or the Battle for Lordaeron directly, it does have a massive impact on where the story is going to go, and ultimately the entire meaning of Battle for Azeroth. Are we fighting for the planet? Or are we fighting for our Titan? How can we save her if we can't even work together? This story sets up so much, and I'm just aching to say so much more. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to spoil anything else. All I'll say is that this book sets up the story for the long run, and it's going to impact the future of Azeroth forever. It's going to change your opinions on many characters. It's going to drastically change what you think you know of Azeroth and certain elements within the story so much. It's going to... Anything more that I say will spoil that, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait until the actual review so I can gush and just talk about everything. But overall, Before the Storm is truly a unique story. Christie Golden has invested so much into so many of these characters, like Anduin, that seeing a book feature him as the main character in one of the most important chapters of his life, and written by the person who gave him life, it was amazing. It felt like a character that I was truly familiar with. I knew Anduin Wrynn as a character. I knew Anduin's plights. I knew everything that he's gone through over the years because of Christie Golden's books, because of, sure, we see him portrayed in certain ways in-game, and certain in-game moments are actually mentioned in the book as well, but these character evolution moments and these character arcs really come to life in these books, and it was really no one else but Christie Golden could have written this book just because of so many characters that are focused that she's just given so much life and so much impact and meaning to in the World of Warcraft story. Really, it comes down to so many of these characters that we know in lore that we see everywhere in game, but we don't really get to know them in game. We get to know them through these stories. And on that note, so many new characters have been introduced or reintroduced in Legion. And the fact that Christie Golden can now sink her hands into these new characters that she's never touched before, she's never seen before, characters she's only briefly referred to or mentioned in the lore, but they haven't been around. I'm excited to see where these storylines go, because characters like Bane and Anduin have turned into such enjoyable characters in these novels. I'm excited to see where she can go with these other characters. I have specific thoughts on specific characters for specific plot lines that I will refer to in the next review. So we'll come back to this moment. I promise we'll come back to it. Overall, the plot is so much bigger than what people realize. And while it may not appeal to certain people who are fans or not fans of certain characters, this story affects everyone in the long run. A lot of people are hoping that this will explain who fires first in the pre-event for Teldrassil and Battle for Azeroth. And you can make your educated guesses, you can make your assumptions based on the characters that you know, but this does not directly answer what's coming in the next few weeks, in the next few months, directly before Battle for Azeroth. This is affecting the expansion as a whole and the franchise as a whole. So it's one of those stories that I think that as a standalone, whether you read it in hype of Battle for Azeroth, or you just read it because you love Warcraft, or you love Christie Golden's writing, or you love Anduin, or Sylvanas, or other characters, just read it. There's no reason not to. Just shut up and read it. If you're expecting an emotional roller coaster, like Tides of War, well, you're not ready, because you thought Tides of War was an emotional roller coaster? Well, hold on to your kindies, because there's so many moments that I'm not going to refer to right now that I will refer to in the next review, but Christie Golden hits pretty hard. As awesome and life-giving as she is with these characters, Christie, you can be cruel sometimes. You can be cruel. With that said, there's not much more I can say about this spoiler-free review without spoiling the actual book. So overall, just order the book. Pre-order the book. If you don't want to wait for the book to be delivered and you don't want to go pick it up, order it on Kindle. Drive to your bookstore. Anything. Or, if you want a copy of the book, but you don't want to do any of those things, enter our giveaway. We have a giveaway on Twitter, twitter.com/thelostcodex. Find our giveaway tweet, retweet the heck out of it, follow us on Twitter, and maybe on June 10th, we'll pick you as one of the 10 winners. Thank you so much to Blizzard and Del Rey Books for sending me the early copy for review, as well as the 5 copies for our giveaway. Remember, we pull those names on Sunday, June 10th, so don't wait, enter the giveaway now. Stay tuned for our juicy, spoiler-filled video where I break down the details of what's happening, share my absolute excitement for the plot, and all the crazy things that will happen in this book and in the future. Oh my god, I wish I could just talk about this right now, but I'm going to give you a chance to say that I did not spoil you at first before I just ruin your whole day and spoil everything in the next video. Remember guys, if you enjoyed this video, give this video a thumbs up, or don't, that's up to you. Free will is in your hands. I'm not Sylvanas, so do what you want. If you're interested in lore and all things story related in the Warcraft universe, and you want to hear me ramble specifically about certain elements of the story, check out our podcast, which can be found here on YouTube, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and Twitch for the premiere, which happens every Sunday. As many of you know, it's a dream of ours to make these Lost Codex videos full-time. We'd love to teach, talk, and present the lore in the visual format that we've created, and really that's made possible by you guys with all the support you've given us through watching your videos and everything else. So from the bottom of our hearts, we want to thank you. Share our videos, tell people about us, post our links in your guild chat, on your forums, send a letter to your pen pal or your grandmother. Tell them about the Lost Codex if you want to share us, or don't. That's up to you. But thank you guys so much for your support. If you want to take that one extra step and continue to support what we do, head on over to our Patreon page and check out some of the rewards we have there. We got some behind-the-scenes steps and some early access previews, as well as some physical goodies as well. Stay tuned for Lost Codex merchandise very soon. You can also check us out on Twitch over at twitch.tv/lostcodexlore, where you can catch us live talking about future episodes, lore, or even some footage of our behind-the-scenes animation process. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in a very spoiler-filled, very near future. Until then, thank you for watching.